Welcome to the American Gazetteer. Tonight, we turn the pages of history back to the year 1884, to a region where the endless prairie meets the inland sea, and where the energy of a rising metropolis vibrates against the quietude of the soil. We traveled to the northeastern extremity of the state of Illinois, to the populous, flat, and industrious lands of Cook County. In the census year of this decade, the county of Cook stood as the demographic colossus of the American interior. According to the official returns of the 10th United States Census, the population numbered 607,524 inhabitants. Yet, by the time of this account, with the ceaseless tide of immigration flowing from the Old World, the population was estimated to exceed 750,000 souls. These inhabitants were distributed across a landscape of subtle beauty and immense utility, a territory of 933 square miles that formed a great arc around the southwestern bend of Lake Michigan. The boundaries of the county were defined by the rigid geometry of the surveyor's chain and the fluid line of the shore. To the north, the boundary line adjoined the county of Lake, traversing the level woodlands. To the east, the county meets the vast, restless expanse of Lake Michigan and the limestone markers of the Indiana state line. To the south, the boundary abutted the fertile agricultural lands of Will County. To the west, the line adjoined the counties of DuPage and Kane. It was a land where the horizon was often unbroken by any hill, a vast stage set for the drama of agriculture and commerce. The topography of Cook County presents a study in ancient geography. It was largely a level plain, the former bed of the glacial Lake Chicago, which stretched inland from the present shore in a series of low, sandy ridges. These ridges, marking the prehistoric shorelines of the receding waters, ran parallel to the lake, providing dry avenues for the early trails and roadways. Between these ridges lay broad, flat prairies, originally wet and marshy, but which by this era had been largely drained by the ditcher's spade and converted into fields of immense productivity. The general elevation was but a few feet above the level of the lake, rising gradually toward the west and northwest to the rolling uplands of Hanover and Barrington. The soil varied according to the ancient currents of the water. In the region of the lake bed, it was a heavy, tenacious clay covered by a thin layer of black loam. This soil, though difficult to work in wet seasons, possesses an inexhaustible fertility for the production of hay and pasturage. Along the ridges, the soil was sandy and warm, adapted to the cultivation of vegetables and small fruits. In the river bottoms, particularly along the Des Plaines and the Calumet, the soil was a deep, black alluvium, capable of producing massive yields of corn and oats. The Skokie, a vast marsh extending through the northern townships, was at that time a wet prairie of peat and sedge, a haven for waterfowl, and a challenge to the husbandman. The hydrography of the county was extensive and sluggish. The continental divide, separating the waters of the Lawrence Basin from those of the Mississippi, traversed the western portion of the county, often so low as to be imperceptible to the eye. The Chicago River was the principal stream of the commercial center, formed by the junction of the North Branch and the South Branch. The Des Plaines River entered the county from the north, flowing southward parallel to the lakeshore at a distance of several miles. It was a broad, shallow stream, bordered by limestone ledges and thickets of hawthorn. The list of tributaries and independent streams includes a litany of descriptive names that define the landscape. There was the Calumet River, draining the southern marshes and flowing into the lake at South Chicago. There was the Little Calumet River. There was Salt Creek, a tributary of the Des Plaines, winding through the western townships. There was Poplar Creek. There was Weller Creek. There was Thorn Creek. There was Stony Creek. There was Silver Creek. There was Buffalo Creek. There was Deer Creek. There was the Skokie River, or the East Fork of the North Branch. There was the West Fork of the North Branch. Each of these streams meandered through fields of timothy and clover, crossed by simple wooden bridges that rumbled softly under the wheels of the market wagons. The natural covering of the land, where the plow had not yet conquered, permitted of oak openings and timbered groves. The big woods along the North Branch and the groves of the Des Plaines were significant sources of fuel and fencing. The trees were principally white oak, bur oak, black oak, hickory, elm, and cottonwood. The prairies, once covered with tall bluestem grass and wild flowers, had largely been broken by the plow, transforming the landscape into a checkerboard of cultivated fields and market. The mineralogical resources included extensive beds of limestone at Lement and Stony Island, which furnished a superior building stone of a light yellow color, known to builders as Athens marble. In the eastern division of the county, resting upon the shores of the Great Lake, laying the county seat and the metropolis of the West, the city of Chicago. During this period, the city was a phenomenon of the age, rising from the ashes of the Great Fire of '71 to become a metropolis of brick, stone, and iron. It was a place where the smoke of industry mingled with the mists of the lake, and where the population approached 600,000 souls, a dense concentration of humanity engaged in commerce, manufacturing, and transportation. The public buildings of the county seat were mighty monuments to civic pride. The combined City Hall and County Building, occupying the square bounded by Randolph, Washington, LaSalle, and Clark Streets, was nearing completion. It was a colossal structure of limestone and granite, adorned with columns and statuary, designed to house the courts and the administration of the county. The United States Custom House and Post Office, occupying a square block, was another edifice of heavy stone, representing the federal authority. The Board of Trade, the temple of the grain markets, was erecting a new and magnificent building at the foot of LaSalle Street, its tower destined to be the highest point in the city. The financial center of the city was located on LaSalle Street, a canyon of stone and glass. Here stood the great banking houses, the First National Bank, the Commercial National Bank, the Merchants Loan and Trust Company, and the Hibernian Banking Association. These institutions hold the wealth of the merchants and the savings of the laborers. The streets of the business district, State Street, Madison Street, Clark Street, Dearborn Street, and Wabash Avenue, were paved with granite blocks or cedar blocks and were lined with commercial palaces. The retail emporiums of Marshall Field, Mandel Brothers, and Carson, Peary, Scott display the merchandise of the world behind great plate glass windows. The streets were illuminated by gas lamps and the new electric arc lights, casting a brilliant, sputtering glow upon the night. The rumble of the cable cars, which had recently been installed on State Street and Cottage Grove Avenue, added a constant undertone to the city's roar. The Chicago River, crowded with masts and smokestacks, was the heart of a vast system of trade. Grain elevators, towering like fortresses along the banks, received the wheat and corn of the prairies. Lumber yards, stretching for miles along the South Branch, stacked the pine of the North Woods in fragrant piles. The Union stockyards, situated to the south, were the market for the cattle and hogs of the entire West, a city of pens and packing houses unto itself. The residential avenues presented a contrast of wealth and modesty. Prairie Avenue and Michigan Avenue were the domains of the merchant princes, lined with mansions of limestone and brownstone. Here lived the families of Pullman, Armour, Field, and Palmer. To the west and north, the streets were lined with cottages of the working class, built of wood and brick, stretching out into the prairie. The manufacturing interests of Chicago were titanic. The McCormick Harvesting Machine Company produces the reapers that harvest the world's grain. The iron rolling mills of the North Branch and the Calumet District produce the rails for the expanding railroads. Yet, amidst this industrial clamor, the parks of the city, Lincoln Park, South Park, later Washington and Jackson, and West Park, offered green retreats of lawns, lagoons, and conservatories, connected by a system of boulevards that encircled the metropolis. Leaving the smoke and tumult of the metropolis, the survey moves to the northern tier of townships. This region, including Evanston, New Trier, Northfield, Wheeling, Palatine, Barrington, Hanover, Schaumburg, Elk Grove, Maine, and Niles, was a land of quiet villages, productive farms, and suburban retreats. In that era, it was characterized by high ridges, wooded groves, and a population of New Englanders and German immigrants. The township of Evanston lay immediately north of the city limits, along the lakeshore. It was the seat of the village of Evanston, known far and wide as the Athens of the West. The village was the home of Northwestern University, whose buildings stood in a grove of ancient oaks near the lake. It was a community of temperance and culture, strictly forbidding the sale of intoxicating liquors. The streets were broad and shaded, lined with the comfortable homes of Chicago businessmen who sought refuge from the city's noise. The prominent families included the Evans, the Luntz, the Judons, the Hinmans, and the Kedseys. North of Evanston lay the township of New Trier. This district was settled largely by immigrants from Trier, Germany, but its lakefront villages, Wilmette, Winnetka, and Glencoe, were becoming aristocratic suburbs. The topography was rugged for a prairie county, with deep ravines cutting through the high bluffs down to the lake. Winnetka was a village of scenic beauty, its houses nestled in the woods. The inland portion of the township was farmed by German families: the Schillows, the Kleems, the Happs, and the Mothers. The Skokie Marsh bordered the western edge, a flat expanse of wet prairie. West of the lake towns lay Northfield Township, a purely agricultural district drained by the North Branch of the Chicago River. The population was almost exclusively German, industrious and thrifty. The village of Oak Glen and the hamlet of Schermerville, later Northbrook, served as local centers. The Schermer family, the Ruggs, and the Werners were prominent landholders. The landscape was a patchwork of well-tilted fields and large barns, with the spire of a Lutheran or Catholic church marking the crossroads. Further west lay Wheeling Township, containing the Des Plaines River along its eastern boundary. The village of Arlington Heights, formerly Dunton, was a thriving town on the Wisconsin division of the Chicago and Northwestern Railway. It was a center for truck farming, sending milk and vegetables to the city. The village of Wheeling, on the river, was an old stagecoach stop. The family names include the Duntons, the Kennicotts, the Myers, and the Sigwalts. Palatine Township, to the west, was a rolling prairie region. The village of Palatine was the commercial center, possessing flour, mills, and sash factories. The Mason, Sutherland, and Batterman families were well known. To the north lay Barrington Township, the highest ground in the county. The village of Barrington was a dairy center, shipping vast quantities of milk. The topography here was undulating, with small lakes and streams draining toward the Fox River. The Lyons, Hawley, and Catlow families were pioneers of this section. In the extreme northwest, Hanover Township was a region of woodland and prairie, crossed by Poplar Creek. The village of Bartlett was the principal station. The landscape was dotted with the herds of Holstein and Jersey cattle, grazing on the rich grasses of the uplands. To the south of the northern tier lay Schaumburg Township, a strictly German settlement devoted to farming. The names of Sunderlage, Grieve, and Meyer predominated. Elk Grove Township was named for the large grove of timber in its center, home to a herd of elk in the early days. The Buss family was prominent here. Main Township, traversed by the Des Plaines River, contains the village of Des Plaines and the hamlet of Park Ridge, formerly Brickton. The brickyards here utilized the river clay to build the city. Niles Township was a district of market gardens, with the village of Niles Center as its hub. Descending southward from the suburban ridges of Evanston and Niles, the survey enters the immediate hinterland of the city, a region including the populous townships of Lakeview, Jefferson, and Norwood Park. During this era, the district served as the market garden of Chicago. It was a landscape of transition, where the celery fields and cabbage patches of the truck farmer were rapidly giving way to the paved streets and brick cottages of the advancing metropolis. The township of Lakeview occupied the lakeshore immediately north of the city limits. It was a region of sand ridges and oak groves, famous at that time for the salubrity of its climate. The U.S. Marine Hospital, a substantial stone edifice, stood near the shore, surrounded by expansive grounds. The township was crisscrossed by the tracks of the Chicago and Northwestern and the Chicago and Evanston railroads, which brought the commuters to the business district. The village of Ravenswood was a suburban retreat of quiet dignity, its streets lined with shade trees and comfortable frame dwellings. The Sulzer, Berry, Anderson, and Gross families were prominent in the development of the land. The Graceland Cemetery, with its winding paths and landscape lagoons, served as the silent city of the dead for the wealthy of Chicago. To the west of Lakeview lay the extensive township of Jefferson. This was known as the Garden Township of the county. The soil, a rich sandy loam, was intensively cultivated by German and Luxembourger families who supplied the city markets with fresh produce. The plank road of Milwaukee Avenue was the great artery of this trade, crowded in the early morning hours with wagons laden with produce moving toward the Haymarket. The hydrography of the township was defined by the north branch of the Chicago River, which wound through the eastern section, bordered by the heavy timber of the big woods. The villages of Jefferson were numerous and thriving. Jefferson Park, the seat of the town government, was a pleasant settlement on the ridge. Irving Park was a planned suburb of villa residences. Avondale, Bowmanville, and Maplewood were growing communities along the railroads. The Cook County Insane Asylum and Poor House, later Dunning, occupied a large farm in the western part of the township. It was a self-contained community where the inmates worked the fields and secured the livestock. The family names of Jefferson include the Esdors, the Grays, the Dickinsons, the Pennoyers, and the Chesters. The Schorsch family was noted for their extensive landholdings and agricultural skill. To the west lay Norwood Park Township, a region of high elevation situated on the Park Ridge Moraine. The village of Norwood Park was a model suburb of curvilinear streets and distinct character. The Seymour, Smith, and Ball families were early residents. The drainage of this section flows into the North Branch via small, unnamed creeks that meandered through the oak openings. Directly west of the city lay the township of Cicero, a vast level prairie that was rapidly transforming into the industrial and residential expansion of Chicago. At that time, Cicero was a political entity of great importance, containing within its borders the villages of Austin, Oak Park, Ridgeland, Moreland, Brighton Park, Clyde, and Hawthorne. It was a landscape divided by the iron rails of the Galena Division of the Chicago and Northwestern, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, and the Wisconsin Central Railroads. The topography of Cicero was originally a wet prairie, known as Mud Lake, in the southeastern portion, but extensive drainage systems had rendered it habitable and productive. The Ogden Ditch was a major engineering work of the period. The northern section, centering on Oak Park, which was then political part of Cicero, was a community of high moral character and intellectual refinement. It was located on a slight ridge, the Continental Divide, where the waters separated. The streets were paved with cedar blocks and shaded by elms planted by the early settlers. The Scoville, Austin, Kettle Strings, and Gale families were the patriarchs of this district. To the south and east, the character of the township was industrial. The Grant Locomotive Works and the shops of the various railroads employ thousands of mechanics. The skyline was punctuated by the smokestacks of factories and the grain elevators along the railroad tracks. The village of Austin, serving as the town seat, was a populous suburb, possessing a fine town hall and excellent schools. The Cicero and Proviso Street Railway was under construction, promising to link these villages scattered with the city via electric traction. The family names of Cicero were a mixture of the New England stock that founded Oak Park and the industrial pioneers of the eastern section. The Laramies, the Ciceros, the Riddles, and the Thatchers were prominent on the tax rolls. The Des Plaines River formed the western boundary of the township, in part, its banks lined with picnic groves that served as the summer playgrounds for the city's masses. West of Cicero lay Proviso Township, a large and fertile district bisected by the Des Plaines River. The river flows through a wooded valley here, providing a scenic break in the prairie. The village of Maywood, located on the west bank, was a model suburb laid out with a park along the river. The Chicago Scraper and Ditcher Company had its works here. Other settlements included Harlem, later Forest Park, known for its German cemeteries, and Melrose. The family names of Proviso include the Thatchers, the Bulls, the Covelles, and the Sofels. Salt Creek entered the Des Plaines in this township, a stream of considerable beauty that wound through the woods of the Thatcher Park. Continuing the survey of the river corridor, we examine the townships of Layden, Riverside, and Lyons, a region defined by the winding course of the Des Plaines River, often called the Aux Plains, and the historic Portage. North of Proviso lay Layden Township, a rural district. The Des Plaines River flows through the eastern portion, offering picturesque scenery and sites for milling. The village of River Park, later Schiller Park, and the hamlet of Turner Park were the principal settlements. The population was largely of German extraction, engaged in general farming and dairying. The Robinson family, descendants of the famous Indian trader Alexander Robinson Che Pinqua, still held lands along the river during this period. The family burial ground, located on the riverbank, was a site of historic interest. The streams of this western section include Silver Creek, Crystal Creek, and Salt Creek. South of Proviso lays the township of Riverside. The village of Riverside, designed by the landscape architects Olmsted and Vaux, was the most picturesque suburb in the West. In that era, It was a park-like labyrinth of winding roads, gas-lit avenues, and extensive commons. The Des Plaines River curves around the village, forming a natural moat. The residences were grand villas of stone and brick, inhabited by the merchant princes of Chicago. The Grand Hotel at Riverside was a resort of fashion. The prominent names included Gage, Badger, Driver, and Lathrop. To the south and west lay Lyons Township, a vast territory rich in stone and history. The Des Plaines River and the Illinois and Michigan Canal run parallel through the township, forming a corridor of commerce. The village of Lyons, situated at the historic portage, was an old settlement. The village of Summit, on the canal, was a shipping point for grain and stone. The village of LaGrange was a growing residential town on the high ground to the west, noted for its fine schools and churches. The industry of Lyons Township was dominated by the stone quarries. At Summit and near the canal, the Niagara limestone rose to the surface. During this period, the air was filled with the sound of steam drills and the blasting of rock. The stone produced here was used to pave the streets of Chicago and build the foundations of its skyscrapers. Flag Creek drains the western portion of the township, flowing south to the Des Plaines. The pioneer families of Lyons included the Viles, the Carringtons, the Cossets, and the Craigmiles. Turning our gaze southward from the city limits at 39th Street, the survey enters a region of titanic industry and aristocratic residence, including the twin townships of Lake and Hyde Park. At that time, these were not merely suburbs, but independent municipalities of such wealth and population that they rivaled many state capitals. It was a landscape of stark contrasts, where the smoke of the world's greatest furnaces darkened the northern sky, while the marsh hen was still nested in the sedges of the Calumet to the south. The town of Lake occupied the territory immediately south of the city. It was the domain of the Union Stockyards, a square mile of pens, chutes, and packing houses that served as the butcher to the world. During this period, the packing town district was a hive of labor where thousands of immigrants found employment. The names of Armour, Swift, Morris, and Libby were the kings of this domain. Yet, to the south and west, the township contains the quiet, leafy suburb of Englewood, a junction point of the railroads, known for its proliferation of churches and the Cook County Normal School. The hydrography was originally a wet prairie, drained by the south branch of the Chicago River and the Stockyard Slip. The family names of the township include the Colvins, the O'Malleys, the Loomises, and the Wentworths. To the east lay the vast township of Hyde Park, stretching along the shore of Lake Michigan, from the city limits down to the Indiana line. In that era, it was often cited as the largest village in the world. It contains the aristocratic suburb of Kenwood, the academic retreat of Hyde Park, and the industrial powerhouse of South Chicago. At the mouth of the Calumet River, the North Chicago Rolling Mill Company had established massive steel works, illuminating the night sky with the glow of Bessemer converters. The crowning jewel of the township was the model town of Pullman, situated on the shores of Lake Calumet. Built by George Pullman for the employees of his Palace Car Company, it was a city of bricks, ordered and precise. Visitors marveled at its paved streets, its arcade, its theater, and the artificial beauty of Lake Vista. The distinct Dutch settlement of Roseland, located on the ridge to the west, supplied the vegetables for the Pullman market. The prominent names of Hyde Park include Cornell, Bowen, Waite, Pullman, and Hopkins. Moving westward along the line of the canal and the river, the survey enters the rugged and historic valley of the Des Plaines, including the townships of Lemont, Palos, and Worth. This region differed markedly from the flat prairie, featured by deep valleys, heavy timber, and extensive limestone deposits. Lemont Township occupies the southwestern corner of the county's river section. The Des Plaines River and the Illinois and Michigan Canal flow through a deep valley cut into the solid rock. The village of Lemont, formerly Athens, was a rough, bustling town of stone. The quarries here were the most extensive in the West, shipping the celebrated Athens marble to every city in the Mississippi Valley. The town was a place of rough vigor, populated by thousands of quarrymen of Irish, Polish, and German extraction. The spires of the Catholic churches rose high above the stone cottages that climbed the steep valley walls. The Singer and Talcott Stone Companies were the lords of the valley. To the east lay Palos Township, a region of singular topography. Here, the drift from the ancient glaciers formed the Valparaiso moraine, creating a landscape of steep hills, deep ravines, and heavy forests known as the Palos Hills. 3 inches, 1884. This was the most rural and sparsely settled township in the county. The Sag Valley, a prehistoric drainage channel, cuts through the southern part of the township, a marshy depression bordered by wooded slopes. The Sag Creek, or feeder, flows through this valley. The population was engaged in dairy farming and timber cutting. The McClaffrey, Kean, Archer, and Swart families maintain their homesteads in the clearings. Worth Township lies between Palos and the city. It was a fertile district, including both prairie and timber. The village of Blue Island was the commercial center. Situated on a high ridge of clay and sand that rose like an island from the surrounding prairie, it was a town of brickyards and breweries. Stony Creek traverses the township from west to east, a stream that requires numerous bridges. The cemeteries of Mount Greenwood and Mount Olivet were established in this period on the sandy ridges. The prominent families included the Rexfords, the Cooleys, the Massey family, and the Kyles. Finally, the survey reaches the extreme southern tier of the county, a region of rich black soil, vegetable gardens, and nascent industrial villages. This district includes Calumet, Thornton, Bloom, Bremen, Rich, and Orland. In that era, this area was the domain of the German farmer and the railroad speculator. Calumet Township, distinct from the river region of Hyde Park, lies south of the city. It was a land of sandy ridges and wet prairies. The village of Morgan Park was situated here, on the high ground of the Blue Island Ridge. It was the seat of the Morgan Park Military Academy and the Baptist Union Theological Seminary. The Calumet River winds through the southern portion, sluggish and deep. The hamlet of Kensington was a growing community. The Vanderside, Ton, and Dalman families were leaders in the Dutch community, famous for their market gardens. South of Calumet lay Thornton Township, a wealthy district possessing fine quarries and fertile farms. The village of Thornton was built upon a ledge of limestone, where Thorn Creek cuts a picturesque channel through the rock. The village of Dolton was a railway center. South Holland, settled by Dutch immigrants, was a garden of vegetables, supplying the city with cabbages and onions. On 4, the Homewood settlement was a residential park. The Dolton, Berger, Gouins, and Sweet families were deeply rooted in the soil. Bloom Township occupies the southeastern corner of the county. In 5, it was traversed by the Old Sauk Trail, a historic highway of the Indians and pioneers. The village of Bloom, later Chicago Heights, was a small trading center at the junction of the railroads. The land is drained by Deer Creek and Thorn Creek. In 1884, this was a dairy region, shipping milk to the city. The McEldowney, Miller, and Sauter families were pioneers. To the west lay Rich Township, a purely agricultural district of rolling prairie, settled by German immigrants. The village of Madison was a railroad junction of importance. Mahler, Six, the Mahler, Brumund, and Stoffragan families cultivated the wheat and corn. Bremen Township, located in the center of the southern tier, was a land of level farms and German churches. The village of Tinley Park, formerly Bremen, was the hub. The Vogt, Fulton, and Cool families were prominent. Orland Township, in the southwest, was the highest land in the southern section, a region of rolling hills and small lakes, including Orland Lake. It was a pastoral district, far removed from the noise of the city. The Cooper, Humphrey, and Myrick families tilled the soil. Completing the circuit of the county, the survey returns to the central depression known as the Mud Lake Valley, including the township of Stickney and the corridor of the Illinois and Michigan Canal. This region, low-lying and level, served as the historic gateway between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River. During that era, it was the throat through which the commerce of the continent passed. The township of Stickney lies southwest of the city limits. It was a district of wet prairie and sandy ridges, principally for the Union Racetrack, where the sporting men of Chicago gathered to witness the trotting matches. The Ogden Ditch, a canal cut through the marsh to drain the waters of the Des Plaines into the Chicago River, traversed the northern portion. The population was sparse, consisting of truck farmers who cultivated the black muck soil. The Beaubien, Hoffer, and Gale families were the custodians of these lands. The defining feature of the central county was the Illinois and Michigan Canal. Stretching from the Bridgeport Locks in Chicago down the Des Plaines Valley to Joliet and beyond, it was a ribbon of water that bound the city to the cornfields of the interior. During this period, the canal was still a vital avenue of trade. Heavy barges, laden with the limestone of Lemont, the grain of the prairies, and the lumber of the north, moved slowly along the towpath, drawn by mules. The canal towns, Summit, Willow Springs, and Lemont were strung like beads upon this liquid thread. The view from the canal boat presents a panorama of the county's geography, the flat prairie giving way to the wooded bluffs, and finally, the sheer rock walls of the Des Plaines Valley. Beyond the arteries of commerce, the social fabric of Cook County was knit together by the district school. There were over 200 of these structures scattered across the rural townships, from the German settlements of Schaumburg to the Dutch truck gardens of Calumet. Built of red brick or white painted frame, they stood at the section corners, beacons of education in the open country. Inside these walls, the youth of the county learned the lessons of the McGuffey readers. The names of the teachers were often the names of the neighbors: Miss Sarah Paddock, Mr. John W. Garvey, Miss Anna Gozel, and Mr. Henry Schrader. In the winter months, the schoolhouse was the center of community life, hosting the spelling bees and singing schools that broke the isolation of the farm. The religious life of the county was equally pervasive. The skyline of every village, Evanston, Oak Park, Blue Island, Arlington Heights, was pierced by the inspiration of faith. In the city, the great cathedrals of the Holy Name and the Centenary Methodist Church held thousands. In the country, the simple frame meeting house stood sentinel over the cornfields. The Lutheran faith was dominant in the German townships of the North and South, while the Methodist and Congregational churches held sway in the New England settlements of the ridges. The graveyards adjoining these churches were the archives of the county's history, where the mossy stones bore the names of the pioneers we have recited: the Wentworths, the Kennicotts, the Busses, and the Thatchers. The year 1884 draws to its close. The electric lights in the streets of Chicago are sputtering into brilliance. The canal boats are moored for the night at Lemont and Willow Springs. The fires in the hearts of Evanston and Blue Island have burned down to glowing embers. The cattle are stabled in the great barns of Schaumburg. The locomotives stand steaming in the roundhouses of Cicero. A profound, velvet silence descends upon the landscape. The history book is closed. The dust settles back upon the archives. The figures of the past, the canal builders, the quarrymen, the market gardeners, and the merchant princes, fade back into the mists of time, leaving behind only the enduring earth and the memory of a people who built a metropolis on the prairie. And thus, we close the entry for Cook County. Rest well.